let's go ahead and jump right into it. Rich, we just got the information on the Lenovo Legion Go. I was exceedingly skeptical about this information until I saw a tweet that had like a video that, I mean, you could easily, somebody could make this video, but the return on investment for making this video, if it's not real, is too high. I think, you know what I mean? So I think it's real, and we'll find out for sure on the first. But like, what was your reaction when you saw what we saw today? And we'll get to all the specs and stuff soon, everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was hyped. I can't hold it in, right? Like, I think that I'm excited about like the V mouse thing, the vertical mouse. I'm excited about the size. I think that the 1600p might be really too big or too high of a resolution, but windowsreport.com did mention that it's going to be nice for like media consumption, right? Like, you can detach the controllers, you can use the kickstand, and now you have a 144 hertz, 8.8 inch, 2560 by 1600 screen that you can just watch your movies on. So even from that perspective, it's exciting. I think the $800 is on the high end as well. Definitely on the high end, especially because there are multiple models. There's 256, 512, 1 terabyte. So it's going to start at $800, and then they've got the accessories as well. But overall, I'm excited, and I can't wait to try out those controls and see how they fit in with Windows gaming.
So before we go any further, let's just talk about the controls, because when I first saw this thing, that was what like piqued my interest, because this thing was wild with a scroll wheel and weird buttons on the side. And last episode, we were talking about it, and my brain said, oh, M1, M2, that's macro 1 and macro 2. And then I think it was Kyle was like, well, actually, I think those might be mouse buttons. And it got me. And then I was like, oh, so you hold it sideways, and that's how you mouse around with it. That was confirmed today, this weird vertical mouse thing. Russ, what's your reaction to this, like this weird vertical mouse thing where you're holding it like this with like a little hockey puck underneath?
Yeah. So it's interesting to me that they made a handheld that basically they're trying to take all the handheld things away from it. They're like, okay, you can also not treat it like a handheld. You can just use it like a laptop basically and use a mouse and keyboard or whatever with it. And so it's a little bit odd to me that they have this kind of setup here that I get it, like they're innovating. And so I appreciate that they're doing that in the first place. But I don't know. I want a handheld that's a handheld too. And yeah, I'm not totally sold on it. Personally, I don't play a lot of games that require like mouse inputs like that anyway. And so I can see there's definitely a demographic for that. It's kind of like the trackpad demographic, you know, but at the same time, I don't really see myself using it.
For me, I think that it answers a question that needs to be answered on a system like the ROG Ally, where you don't have good mouse inputs, and so you're kind of stuck using the right thumbstick as a mouse cursor, which is never a good experience. They have the trackpad on here to take care of that, which is great. But then they're like, okay, well, you want to play your first-person shooter, WASD and mouse style. You hold the left Joy-Con in your left hand, and you hold the right one, you know, like a vertical mouse, and you kind of skate it around on the little hockey puck thing. I think that does appeal to people, but I think like you're saying, the number of people that appeals to is very, very small. And of course, everybody who that does appeal to in the comments are going to be like, well, I'm part of that group and I want to be able to do that. And I totally get that. I think it's cool. I don't see myself really using it all that often. Unless this is like your only computer. And so you come home, you dock it in your like little docking station, which is hooked up to your monitor. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to like use the right Joy-Con as my vertical mouse, and I've got a keyboard attached to it. But at that point, why not just have like an extra mouse? But I don't know. Rich, are you going to be using that vertical mouse very much, or is that something that's kind of lost on you?
It's one of those things that I'm dying to try it, but I have no idea like how practical it's going to end up being for me. I mean, kind of like Russ is saying, when I play my handhelds, I do just play them in my hand, right? Like I'm kind of a foreshadowing to something later on. I'm not really docking my handheld very often. I'm not really like standing it up. I had the One X Player 2 to review, and I never really used it that way. But I do want to try it. I think it's interesting that the commercial that they leaked does have someone that looks like they're getting their ass handed to them in a first person shooter, and it's like I don't remember what it was, but it was like a popular first person shooter, and they just switch from kind of traditional controls to mouse controls. So I can see kind of what they're going for there, but I don't know if it's going to land for me. I just can't wait to try it.
Yeah, the way I see it.
Oh, go ahead, Russ.
I was just going to say, real quick, the way I use a mouse input on a Windows handheld is mostly like, putting in my username and password, things like that. This is an 8.8 inch screen. Like you can use the touch screen. Like that's a lot of room to use a virtual keyboard and point around and stuff. So it's not like a smaller Neo one where you're just trying to hopefully press on the right thing. And so it kind of negates the need for a mouse for me. And so that's why it's even more ironic that now we have a mouse.
Yeah, well, not only do we have a mouse, but we also have a trackpad, which would solve that issue. Like my biggest gripe with the ROG Ally is the fact that it's such a pain to use without a mouse and keyboard. This, you're right about the giant screen, which we're going to get to in a second. You're right about the giant screen, but then it also has a trackpad. So this extra thing seems like just an extra thing, but at the end of the day, I don't have to use it, so I'm not going to complain that it's there. I do think I don't like, one of the things I don't like about the Switch is the removable Joy-Cons, like the fact that you can take them off. It feels like a point of failure where, it just doesn't feel as solid. Like I take my Steam Deck and I wiggle the controls. Like that doesn't feel like it's going to fail. If I have a Switch in my hand and I wiggle those Joy-Cons, it feels like if I did it too hard, they would just snap right off, which by the way, these don't seem to slide on. They snap on. Like in the video, the person pushed the button on the back with their fingers and then they just snapped it off instead of sliding it off, which I thought was strange, or at least unexpected. But let's move on to the screen. This screen is it's 140 hertz variable refresh rate. It's got an 8.8 inch QHD plus display. So I saw that stuff and I was like, okay, let me get my head around what does all this stuff mean. So first off, 8.8 inch screen. Absolutely massive, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But QHD means quad HD, basically HD times 4, and then plus means that it's not a normal aspect ratio. So I think this is going to be 16 by 10 instead of 16 by 9 at 2560 by 1600. Which, if you just divide that by 2, you get the same resolution as the Steam Deck. So essentially, you could run your games at 1280 by 800 and use FSR to upscale those games to this, and it would be perfect integer scaling and should look great. Am I wrong about that, Rich?
No, you're not wrong. That's my understanding as well. So yeah, even if you're running in 800p, you should get a nice looking picture. And also when you're using FSR, I mean, obviously FSR has sort of the algorithmic enhancements, but I imagine it's going to look even better using that sort of integer scaling here. So yeah, I think that's going to be a nice feature to this.
What do you think about 8.8 as the screen size? That seems massive to me.
I'll let you go for that one, Russ.
So that's so the biggest I've used is the AOK Zoe A1 Pro, which is an 8-inch 16 by 10 screen, and it is massive. It's huge. It's I play on that, and I'm just like, this is like a luxury that I don't need. Like that's what I think of when I'm playing it, And so 8.8 inches is, it's going to be bigger, and so we'll see how that goes. I'm interested in that. The main thing I'm really most interested in with the screen specs is the variable refresh rate and when that will kick in. And so on the ROG Ally, it kicks in at 48 frames or hertz. And so I'm hoping that it's somewhere similar to that, because that's what I want. Really smooth gameplay that's under 60 hertz. That's what I'm looking for here. I don't want to play any game at 144 hertz. I can't even tell the difference once it gets past 90. You know what I mean? And so I'm not like holding my breath for like, oh wow, 144 hertz gameplay is going to be the pinnacle here on a handheld. It's really going to come down to how that variable refresh rate really translates to a good experience with lower spec kind of gaming.
Why do you think that they went with 144 instead of 120? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe it's just easier to buy 144.
Yeah, I think it's a sourcing
displays?
thing. Yeah,
Okay.
Maybe there's like some sort of micro laptop that already had screens like that, and they were able to just use those.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then the variable refresh rate, just for those who are watching that don't know what that is, it basically means that the screen changes the resolution in order to match the game that you're playing. So if you're playing a game at 60 frames per second, the refresh rate of the screen will automatically match that at 60 frames per second. And what Russ is saying is that on the ROG Ally, that starts happening at, what did you say, 44 or 48? 48 hertz. So if you're playing a game that's at 44 hertz, it's not going to work. But if you can get it up to 48 hertz, then it's going to match. And I believe different displays have different not widths. What's the word that I'm trying to think of? Like higher and lower boundary ranges, different ranges of refresh rates that they can kind of match with. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, the way that it works with the ROG Ally that makes it so great is that as long as you're playing the game somewhere between 48 and above frames per second. So, you know, when you're playing a game that's going all over the place often, you'll get like stutters if you're playing it, say, on a Steam Deck. With this, if it's between like 48 and 60, it'll just play smoothly, even as those frames are just kind of going all over the place, as long as it's over 48. And so that's what I'm hoping is something similar to that.
All right. Rich, go ahead.
I think one of the things I'm excited about is not necessarily whether or not it'll work for me, the Legion Go in general, but the fact that it's kind of carving its own lane. So I'm currently reviewing the Air S1 or Air 1S for my Neo, and it's a little too small for me. I can comfortably play for like the first hour, but after the first hour, I start to get slight hand cramps. And if I have repeated sessions of that, then I start to feel it over the course of the week. But the Steam Deck is the perfect size, and so the Lenovo Legion Go might end up being too big for me. But I think that with everything that it has, it sets itself apart from the other handhelds, and so it justifies its existence just by having all of these different features. And I'm hoping that really satisfies some audience out there. But yeah, it's something more so that at this point, I'm really curious to try out and see if it fits my lifestyle, and see who else may fit, who else that may be a fit for as well.
Yeah, the idea that it's bigger than the Steam Deck. I mean, when the Steam Deck was first announced, everybody was like, whoa, that's huge. Like, that's like 2.2 Nintendo Switches or something like that. I can't remember because they were looking at the weight. This one, I think it's 1.8 pounds with the controllers attached. Like, that is really, really hefty. And if it's not balanced well, it's not going to be very comfortable. Hopefully, I'm not going to assume that they're not going to. I'm going to assume that they're going to balance it well, and we'll find out later on. Boy, that 8.8 inch screen. You would think with a system that big that they would be able to squeeze in a bigger battery, because the battery that's in here is, what was it, 48 watt hours?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, that's only 8 watt hours bigger than the Steam Deck and ROG Ally, and this has the same chip as, well, starting at the same chip. We don't know if all versions have the same chip, but this is the same chip as the ROG Ally, which is at 1080p. So whatever the battery life is going to be on the ROG Ally, it's going to be worse on this. I can't imagine that it's going to be better. What do you think about that, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 20% increase in battery, but it's not there. I just recently reviewed a device with 48 watt hour battery. I want to say it was the 1S, or maybe it was a different maybe it was, I've reviewed so many, I can't remember which one it was. I don't know if it was the 1S. Oh yeah, there it is, the 1X Fly. Right. The 1X Fly is a 48 watt hour battery. And so that's the same size, and it just barely gives you the same amount of battery life. Like it's not really a huge difference. And so I'm not expecting great things in the battery. Going back to the weight too, it's 854 grams for this Lenovo one. And that is, so I actually just called my wife the other day or a few minutes ago and said, hey, weigh my Steam Deck real quick with the Kill Switch case on it. So I have the Kill Switch case on it, and then I also have the skin on it. And so that's probably, another couple grams. It's 815 grams when it's all full decked out. So when I'm actually playing it, that's how heavy my Steam Deck is because I use that all the time.
815?
15. And
then this
Lenovo
one is
854.
854.
Okay.
So we're looking at like a 40 gram heavier kind of difference there. That's a lot. I mean, I think just my Steam Deck is not something that I can like hold over my head and play, like I have to kind of lean on my elbow, like when I'm playing it, like on bed, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. That's really heavy.
That's why they are debuting the glasses as well at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So let's
kind of leave it in your lap.
Yeah, that's a good transition to take a look at the glasses real quick, but we'll come back to the rest of the stats of the system in a second. Rich, tell us about these glasses that Lenovo's selling alongside this thing, not in the same package.
Yeah, so they seem very similar to the other glasses that are on the market right now, the Viture and the X Reals. So these are micro OLED displays. They are full HD per eye, so 1080p. They have built-in speakers. They work with any USB-C device, so no proprietary implementation. And I assume vice versa, right? I assume the Vitures and the X Reals are going to work here as well if you already have those. 1.2 meter cable, so about 3 feet long, and they start at $499. I actually don't know what price the other ones are, but $499, it's a lot to spend, right? That's not an impulse buy, nowhere near it.
Yeah.
Russ is laughing at this. Let's hear it, Russ.
The X Reals, I think, are $299. I'd have to look. And then I also have tested the TCL ones that are around the $300 price point as well. And those feel like such a commodity, like such a novelty. Like in the first place, to pay more, I don't get it. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. We went to New York City a couple of weeks ago, and I have the X Reals, and I thought about bringing them with me, but and listen, I was on a train for 5 hours, 6 hours on the way back, and it would have been the perfect thing to bring with me, but I was like, I don't want to carry the extra stuff, Yeah. I only have so much stuff, like. When I reviewed them, I said to myself, if I traveled all the time, these would be amazing. And they are really, really cool. It's a very cool experience using these AR glasses with something like the Steam Deck or the Lenovo Legion Go or the Asus ROG Ally or etc.
Yeah.
But when I had to decide what was I going to bring with me in order to pack light, I left them at home. And so, I mean, clearly I am not the market for this, but I think the people who are the market for this is very compelling stuff. But that's not a large group of people. You know what I mean, Rich?
Yeah, I agree. And I would also say that like I have the Viture glasses and I've been reviewing those as well. And the experience I had is that, I feel aware of my surroundings, but my wife didn't feel like I was aware of my surroundings, right? So it's a little bit like wearing sunglasses indoors, like you seem a little aloof when you're wearing them. And so it wasn't really practical for me, but they were enjoyable. I just, like you said, I didn't have a lot of reason to pull them out all the time. And I would not spend $499 to buy my own pair.
No, same. Especially when there's cheaper ones on the market.
Yeah, I just checked in there, $399.
They're $399, you said, Russ?
Sorry, I was gonna say they're $399. Yep.
For which ones?
For the X Reals, and then they're $440 for the Virtual.
Okay. So this is the most expensive one, but I mean, it's only a difference of $100. So I don't know if the experience for this is better, then maybe you want to spend that extra $100 on the Lenovo glasses or the Legion glasses they're called. But that's not me. I'm not doing that. Back to the system. One thing that it has that the other systems don't have is faster RAM. So according to Windows Report, the memory that is 16 gigabytes of 7500 megahertz LPDDR5X. I'm not somebody who look. I don't I don't pay that close attention to that kind of thing, like to the just like straight up numbers. So I don't know how much of a big improvement this is going to be. Rich, do you know how much of a big improvement this is going to be?
I don't know. I know I just brought up that there was the Steam Deck mod of someone that upgraded to, I think it was to 32 gigs of RAM on their Steam Deck. And it also happened to be faster RAM. And I said, this is not going to affect gaming so much, but there was a comment in there that I hearted that said why it would affect gaming and which games it would affect greatly. So I do think that there are at least edge cases where this happens, but I don't know for sure if it's going to be a better experience throughout your whole, your entire library.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, it's hard because I think the high RAM really helps with like really high end, AAA games. And those are not the games you want to really be playing on these devices anyway. Like not to mention that you're going to really be pushing it, but also the battery life's just going to suffer. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like for me, 32 gigs of RAM, especially, from an emulation standpoint, I could take it or leave it, and so, yeah, it doesn't mean anything to me.
In this case, it is 16 gigabytes, but it's the thing that Bill was saying is that it's fast, right? So 7,500 megahertz, LPDDR5 XRAM.
Yeah, so the speed may help, that 7,500 megatransfers per second. We've seen that in other devices. I think the One X Fly had it. One of them did, one of those millions that I've reviewed. And I don't know if it made like a huge difference in terms of gameplay, but it is a nice peace of mind to be able to say, okay, at least I'm getting the very best that I can. And INEO actually just had a BIOS update that allows for them that now a user can update the RAM if they'd like to have that higher RAM stick. Yeah.
So let's move on and just talk about the price. I mean, we alluded to it before. It starts at $800. There's 3 versions. The 3 versions, I can't remember, the low end for storage is 256. So there is no 64 gigabyte version, which in my opinion, Valve should ditch the 64 gigabyte version of the Steam Deck and like upgrade their storage a little bit. But that's just me. But it starts at 256 gigs, then 512, then 1 terabyte of M.2 2242 drive. So it uses different drives than the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. It's going to be slightly longer, I believe. So for $800, I'm guessing you're getting the low end one. And then what do you guys think the high end one is going to cost? Rich?
In my video, I said over $1,000. That's all I can really commit to. I'm going to say, between 1,000 and 1,100. I don't think that a terabyte is going to go past 1,100, but I don't know, Russ, you have more experience with some of these Windows handhelds. What do you think?
I think they have to keep it at $100 price differences. So just increments of 100. They go beyond like $999 is that's it. It's it, right? You cannot say anything above that. $10.99, whatever. It's just too much. And so, especially, I don't know if they're doing any sort of partnership with a big box store like Best Buy and actually going to have this in stores. People are going to scoff at anything above 1,000.
Well, yeah, because if you look, I mean, I said this on my channel 1,000 times that there were handheld PCs. There were lots of handheld PCs before the Steam Deck. Nobody was paying attention to them because they were all really, really expensive because they're made by these small companies that just couldn't make, like, they don't have the scale in order to make them cheap enough. And then Valve comes in, backed by the Steam store, where they make money on every single game that's sold on Steam, so they can take a hit putting this thing out at $400 for the cheapest one. And the only one that got close to them is the ROG Ally, as far as I know. I don't pay as close attention to all the different models of stuff out there, but the ROG Ally got close at $700. That's $50 more than the most expensive Steam Deck. And now this comes in its cheapest version because they're not going to leak it they're not going to leak the most expensive version. So their cheapest version is going to be $800. I think Rich is right. The most expensive version is going to be $1,000, and that isn't really competing with the Steam Deck, in my opinion, especially because now you can get a refurbished Steam Deck for $320. Like, you could buy 3 Steam Decks or 1 Lenovo. I hate that word,
That's
by
insane.
the way. Lenovo Legion Go.
Yeah,
That's
think
an
about
insane
this. Like
stat.
you buy three Steam Decks, you got your cloud saves, you charge all three of them up, you play one until the battery's empty, you grab the next one, you resume your cloud save. You've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours of gameplay right there. So
That is hilarious. That's great. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. I knew, I compared it to the Steam Deck refurbs at 319, but the fact that you can buy 3 of them and still, come in
yeah.
under the well, not under, but around the same price of $1,000 Legion Go is insane.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
One thing that the Legion Go does come with that the Steam Deck does not is 3 months of Game Pass Ultimate. So it does seem like Microsoft is probably going to try and get their fingers in all of these handhelds like made by the big companies. So, we've got Asus that came with X months of Game Pass. This one's coming with Game Pass. Maybe the Dell Alienware, whatever thing is going to come with Game Pass stuff. I can see that being one way that they can keep the price lower because Microsoft is like pushing this on them and saying, hey, if people sign up, then you get this money and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. This is a tough pill to swallow. If you guys could change anything you wanted about this device, what would you change? Rich?
I think I don't know. So I don't know where I would put the trackpad, but it seems like it's a little too low where it is right now. And so it seems like it would be hard to actually use. So that's something I would change. I just don't know how I would go about it. It seems like it's already crowded for space as it is. So that's the main thing I would change. But yeah, Russ, I'm guessing you would want to make it smaller.
It's hard to say without having it in the hands because I want to just trust their designers and engineers. But it does look for me, the bottom corners are just a little bit too slanted in, like this. And so I feel like your pinkies may not have a good solid grip like they do on both the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck because those both kind of square off at the bottom. And so that's my worry point because that reminds me a lot of like the One X Player, like the original ones and like a bigger version of that, or even the One X Player 2. And those were comfortable, but not like a pleasure to use, And so that's what I'm a little bit worried about.
Yeah, for me, I would keep the screen the same size. I would lower the resolution, and I would get a bigger battery in there. Because those are the things that people the battery is the thing that people complain about the most when it comes to handheld PC games. Is that you just chug through the battery so much. And sure, this thing has fast charge, but the ROG Ally also has fast charge. But honestly, I don't want to have to really think about it when I'm playing a game. I'm at 20%. I better stop playing and go plug it in. Do you guys ever play when you're plugged in? I never, ever do. Rich?
No.
I do when I'm in bed. So usually I'm often playing in my bed, right? Like that's the time that I have where I'm getting 30 to 45 minutes before I go to sleep. And so I'm also near an outlet. So I will plug in and just enjoy my time. But other than that, then again, I also have my battery pack nearby. I always have like my Steam Deck bag and I have my battery pack. So yeah, I tether fairly often, I'd say.
See, I keep a battery pack in my bag, and when I need to charge, I charge, but I don't play while I'm charging. So that's never people are always sending me comments like, well, when you have it plugged in, is it going to have the Asus ROG Ally? Is it at the, 35 watt something or other when it's plugged in?
Right,
and you can't do that when you're on a battery. I'm like, I don't care. I'm plugging it in to charge it and I'll play it later. Yeah. But, that's just me. Anything else that you guys want to talk about with the Lenovo, I said it right this time, Legion Go, before we move on? Russ?
Yeah, just one thought that kind of came to me as we were talking is like we're getting to the point now where this is just becoming another form factor to buy a computer. So, you imagine you walk into Best Buy and you're like, hey, I want a laptop. Like, okay, which laptop do you want? There's 20 of them right here. You know what I mean? What if we get to the point where you walk into Best Buy, like, I'm going to get a handheld PC. I'm like, okay, which one do you want? Here is our showcase showing 5 different models that you can buy right now. And that's just a weird concept to me. You know what I mean? I think of a handheld, I think of just a console that was made for being played in handheld mode and a new one comes out every few years, like a DS or whatever, The idea of just this being its own new space is kind of crazy.
I think that it's awesome that it's this new space, but for some reason, people get it in their head, even though these play the same games, that they have to like pick one and have it be their identity. Then they're like, Steam Deck is the best and I hate everybody else, or ROG Ally is the best and I hate everybody. And it's like, it's nonstop. And if we have the more of these that we have, do you think that goes away because there's just so many, it becomes like a laptop? Because you don't see people maybe you do. You don't see people in like laptop reviews being like, "Oh, they're the worst. I only like this kind of laptop."
Right. Where the Dell stands.
Yeah, the Dell stands.
Well, that's the thing. When the ROG Ally came out, that's exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting that there were no Asus ROG fanboys, and I was dead wrong. There are lots and lots of Asus ROG, the brand, right, fanboys, which I don't know if they exist for Lenovo Legion as a brand. I don't know if they exist for Alienware as a brand. So I would have expected the same thing, but now I've learned that, yeah, you can align yourself to basically anything. So I don't know what to expect at this point.
Hey everybody, Bill here from the Nerd Nest podcast. If you enjoyed this video, then you're probably going to enjoy the full episode, which you can find right here. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the next one.